Good afternoon and welcome to our final In the Know webinar for 2020, which is brought to you by our good friends at Max. Today's topic on introducing our community partners will provide clubs with more information about these organisations so your club can consider future support or engagement with each group. Today we have Major General retired Mike Smith AO, Chairman of the Gallipoli Scholarship Fund, Geoff Evans, CEO of Disaster Relief Australia, which was known as Team Rubicon Australia. Myself will be presenting on the Kokoda Youth Leadership Challenge. And also we have Katie Biggs, the training manager of a program called Accidental Counsellor with Lifeline. The RSL and Services Clubs Association works with a number of community organisations providing important services, support programs, just like these ones I've just mentioned. The association relies on the support of our member clubs to fund these services and organisations through the Club Grants program and other donations. Each of the organisations and programs featured in this webinar play an important role in delivering real support for communities and for our clubs to engage with their communities. Our first presenter today is Major General retired Mike Smith AO, who is the Chairman of the Gallipoli Scholarship Fund. Welcome, Mike.
G'day, Brad. Can everyone hear me all right, I hope?
Yep, you're fine.
Well, it's a beautiful day in Canberra, everyone. The blue skies, no wind, and most importantly, no coronavirus. And the only thing is that the Garbos are on strike. Otherwise, not a problem. Let me first acknowledge the traditional owners wherever you happen to be listening or participating in this webinar. And I'd really like to start by thanking the RSL Clubs Association for all that they've not only done for the Gallipoli Scholarship and continue to do, but for facilitating this today. So, Brad, you got the slides on? Fantastic. We'll go to the next one, mate. Now, the first thing I want to do right at the start is let you know how you can help the Gallipoli Scholarship Fund before I tell you a little bit more about it. And it is a fantastic scholarship that we offer. But the real thing is that you can promote awareness of the scholarship through your networks. And that's really important to us because unless we get quality scholarship applicants, then the scholarship can't exist. And we need quality applicants and we need more funding. And that's been going pretty well, I might say, despite COVID. But the more people who know about us, the more funding that we'll be able to get. And please, you can help by just telling people about the Gallipoli Scholarship Fund and sending them to our website, which has been redone over the last couple of years and really has lots of good information on it. So that's really how you can help. And of course, if you are in clubs and are thinking of club grants, we do go out to different clubs. I know the clubs have been really impacted by COVID-19, but hopefully everyone will be back on their feet soon. Thanks, Brad. So what is the Gallipoli Scholarship Fund? Well, as you can see here, we're a very highly respected and accountable not-for-profit association. We've been going now for more than 20 years and we offer tax-deductible status to everybody. Now, the main purpose is to honour the service and sacrifice of our veterans. So you've got to be a descendant of a veteran and a deserving descendant to get a scholarship. And we've attracted over 130 scholars over the time since we've been going, and that number is increasing as we're now attracting more funding. And it's really great to see that the scholars themselves have established an alumni and they stay in contact with each other. And we're now at the stage, of course, because we've been going for 20 years, we have some of our scholars on our management committee, and that's really terrific. In fact, one of the first 2 scholars is now the Mayor of the Hills District in Sydney, and she's got a PhD as well, and she's on it. Next slide, Brad. Now, we're very fortunate to have a couple of great patrons, the Governor-General and Mrs. Hurley, and they are our patrons at our request in their private capacity. So that means that when they finish in Canberra and as being the Governor-General, then we can still keep them on. But they have made a huge difference by coming on because of their network. And on the 4th of December this year, despite the restrictions of COVID, they're holding a reception for us at Yarralumla. And we're getting all of this year's scholars and some of our donors and some of last year's scholars as well to be there. And we're going to preface that by all going to the War Memorial beforehand, and all of our this year's scholars will lay wreaths at the last post ceremony. So as you can see, we're very fortunate to have such fantastic patrons. Thanks, Brad. Next slide. So the purpose of the scholarship is explained here, and basically it's to perpetuate among young Australians an understanding of those enduring traditions of perseverance, courage, self-sacrifice and mateship, and that all started at Gallipoli, and that's why it's been called the Gallipoli Scholarship. And our whole intent is to provide financial assistance to descendants of those veterans commencing in their first year of tertiary studies at university or TAFE. Now, two of the really fantastic things about this scholarship is that it can be done anywhere in Australia at an approved university or TAFE. So that's proximate to where the candidates are. And before they get it, we weight it so that 60% depends on the necessitous circumstances of the individuals. And there's some amazing stories of people that otherwise wouldn't have got to university without this sort of help. And I'll tell you a bit more about what we offer shortly. Next slide, Brad. So this photograph that was taken at Government House in Sydney a few years ago, just, I think, in a picture, explains what motivates us at the Gallipoli Scholarship to keep going. And these were just some of the young scholars that had come through. And of course, in the centre was then Governor, now Governor-General David Hurley and Linda Hurley. Linda, by the way, has already written, composed and sung the Gallipoli song. So we actually have a Gallipoli song. And the erudite person on the, as you look at it, on the right of General Hurley is my predecessor who established it. That's Major General Arthur Fiddock. He established it and remained as chairman until he asked me to take over a few years ago. He did an amazing job and got it off the ground. What I want to say, though, is that this was established by World War I veterans who, when they came back from a visit to Gallipoli in 1996, said, we've got to do something so young people never forget the traumas of war and what we went through to contribute to Australia's freedom. So we honour that in everything that we do. And I'm sure if they could see what we've achieved, they'd be really, really ecstatic. But on our website, we've got testimonials from the people the scholars and what it's meant to them. So if you want to read some really great stories, just go to our website. Thanks, Brad. Okay, so each year, except this year, we have a ceremony, and it's done at Maryland's RSL. And this is just a photo of that. That was taken last year and with some of the scholars from last year. And we normally give 7 to 10 scholarships a year, but that's actually increasing, and I'll explain why later. We're actually getting more funding. And they get $6,000 a year, but unlike some other scholarships, we don't give it to them up front. they've actually got to pass their first semester if they want to get the second tranche. And we've found that's a great incentive. But we are pretty flexible about it, I might say. So each scholar can have circumstances arise. We had one who did extremely well in their first semester but didn't like their course, decided to defer to the next year and do a different course. And so we gave them their second tranche when they started their next year. So we are flexible. This year, because of COVID-19, some of the results from even first semester have been delayed in coming in. So we couldn't penalise the students this year. So we've already paid the second tranche. Some of the kids this year, some of the young men and women this year are doing it exceptionally tough. But that's pretty much what we offer. And that's a very competitive scholarship when we compare it with others. Next slide, Brad. Now, I mentioned incentive before. Well, we decided a couple of years ago that if a student got distinction level average in their first year of study, they could apply for a second year at the same rate of $6,000 a year. And we named that the Bill Hall Bursary after one of the original founders of the scholarship, Major Bill Hall. And that's his daughter that you can see in the photo on the right of the screen, and her husband. So it's Chris and Julie von Willer, and they fund that Bill Hall Bursary. But it's amazing the difference this has made, because this year we found out of the 8 scholarships that we gave the previous year, 5 got distinction level. So we've got to get more money to try and support them in it. But having an incentive has really proved valuable. The guy in the middle, Clarence Hare, comes from a not so well-off family up in Woolgoolga. And he was one of the first to get this second year scholarship. And I'm pleased to say Clarence has now been picked up by the RAAF and is finishing his whole mechanical engineering degree at the University of New South Wales on a RAF undergraduate. So this guy's now being paid. He can't believe his luck. So he's going to help us for a long time. Next slide, Brad. We maintain an honour board of all of our graduates so that, you know, we never forget who they are. But one of the reasons why I'm showing this is just to emphasise that without the support of RSL clubs, ex-service clubs, ex-service organisations, this would never have got off the ground and it would be impossible to sustain it. And we're going more widely now around Australia. We were just focusing pretty much on the New South Wales area, but now we're going more widely, and that's because the applicants now are coming from all over Australia. And we think, therefore, if we're having applicants from all over Australia, ex-service organisations all across Australia should be willing to contribute to this terrific cause. And by the end of the year, we'll also have a bequest program going that we want to populate right through the veterans community, because we think there might be a lot of veterans who just might like to leave something for us. Next slide, Brad. Now, this is a photo taken a few months ago at Government House with, again, our patrons in the centre. I'm, of course, on the right flank there. But the 2 other gentlemen on the left, as you look at, is the Chief Executive of Lockheed Martin, Joe North, and the Chief Operations Officer standing next to Linda Hurley is Gary Sutcliffe. We decided we'd test our arm with the corporate community, and we couldn't have chosen a better partner, because the bottom line is Lockheed Martin Australia are now providing 12 bursaries over the next 5 years. So their first candidate is already up and running this year. Next year there'll be 2, and then for the years after it, 3 each. So you can see how by going down that model, we are able to increase the number of bursaries that we can offer. That's why we need more applicants. And I'm pleased to announce that another firm in Canberra, GIGLIO Indigenous, are coming on board, and they want to offer a bursary to the descendant of an Indigenous veteran. And I think this is fantastic that we're going down this line. And I was told just last week by GIGLIO, they think they'll have enough money in the pot for two scholarships next year, or 2 bursaries next year, which is really, really great if that happens. That does not prevent Indigenous scholars applying. We've had some Indigenous in the past, but they can apply for all the various bursaries and scholarships, but we're going to have at least one dedicated specifically to that cause. And I think that's fantastic, because many of our Indigenous veterans have not been acknowledged to the extent that they should have been. So I'm really pleased to going down this route. We've got a couple of other corporates that are looking at it to start their bursary, and I'm pleased to say that one of the Rotary clubs in Canberra, Hall Rotary, that gets lots of money from their markets, have just signed up to provide a bursary for the next 3 years, and they want that student to be studying something to do with agriculture. So we're very flexible how we work with clubs and organisations in order to meet their requirements as well as ours. And we do that either under a formal agreement or through a memorandum of understanding. Thanks, Brad. Now, I just wanted to reassure everybody that we're not a fly, a fly in the sky type organisation. We have a very strong governance commitment. You will find our constitution on our website, which has just been redone over the last few years. Our strategic plan is on there, and we meet regularly. Our management committee really looks after the interests of the members, and we mentor every student that goes through. So we just don't give them the money and let them go. We actually have a mentor. In fact, on Friday night, I've got one coming for dinner at our place here, and all of our mentorees do the same thing. One of the great things about going down the corporate route is that the corporates actually see this as a potential recruiting ground for them, and they want to give them internships and those sorts of things. So it's really great. And the final slide, please, Brad. So this is the ad that's currently running. Applications opened on the 1st of November and they'll close on the 1st of February. And then the decision will be made in early March, people notified, and providing Corona doesn't prevent us, we'll all gather at Maryland's RSL to award the new scholars, and they'll have their families with them just before Anzac Day in next April. If anybody would like to know more about the scholarship, please go on to our website, and please don't hesitate to contact me. You just send it to chairman@gallipolischolarship.com.au. That's chairman@gallipolischolarship.com.au. I'll certainly answer you, or there's other contact details on our website. So again, I'd like to really thank the association for the opportunity to present today. And if you are thinking of a wonderful cause for future Australians who are connected to veterans, then please think of the Gallipoli Scholarship Fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. A great presentation on the Gallipoli Scholarship Fund and how clubs can be involved to help provide financial assistance to some deserving young Australians. I've had the privilege of knowing Brad Chapman through our Kokoda Youth Leadership Challenge, who's come from Fine Flower at the back of Grafton. His family on the cattle property, and he's an amazing young man. And yeah, I couldn't think of a better guy who deserved this opportunity to get into university. So thank you, Mike. Now we have Geoff Evans, CEO of Disaster Relief Australia. Over to you, Geoff.
Thanks, Brad. I assume you can see my screen okay?
Yep, perfect.
Great. Look, thanks everybody. Back up a touch. So a person on the southeast coast of Sydney sent me this in November last year, just after the fires have gone through. It's quite a haunting image. But when I look at that, the one thing that stands out to me is that that looks just like a war zone. And so if you were to parachute a veteran into that situation, they'd actually be quite comfortable there. And come what may, they'd make it work. We know that about 4 out of 5 veterans are okay, but 20%, 1 in 5 suffer some sort of mental health challenge. And while symptom reduction, that is really good treatment, is a really necessary first step, all will experience some sort of loss of self and purpose. And treatment alone is not enough because of that loss of self and loss of purpose. So our model is we figured out the best way to help a veteran is actually to ask them to help somebody else. So if we have someone come in and they're a bit lost or they're suffering PTSD, our answer to them is, listen, you're not a victim, pick up the chainsaw, go over there and help those people. They've just lost everything. They're victims and you can help them. And when they do that, they find they get a real sense of purpose and responsibility from it. And they recreate an identity outside the military and they feel valued and they feel important. In the background, we then work extensively where they need it to plug them into mental health treatment providers like Open Arms, etc. So our mission is actually to keep our veterans focused on a new mission, and that new mission is helping others. So we always place service above self. You don't join Disaster Relief Australia to get anything, you join to serve. And the key to it is the impact we have on the community. I was in Wheeler-Warren, which is a town just inland from Kempsey in late 2019, and a very elderly pensioner couple came into our operations base, and they wanted to go back to their house for the first time after the fires, and they asked us if we would go with them, and of course we said we would. So we went out to their farm and they had lost everything. It had all been destroyed. And when they got out of the car, both of them just sunk to the ground and cried. And you could just, you feel the energy from something like that. Everyone was impacted by it. And they wanted us to recover a few possessions, some war medals and some photos. We got the war medals, we didn't get the photos, they'd been destroyed. But what I noticed working with them throughout the day is that they began to change. And by the end of the day, they were kicking cans around on the farm and having a laugh and mucking around with everybody. And I look back on that and I often think about it because I've seen it many other times. And if you read on the screen, it's the same thing. And that was just in Batlow a couple of weeks ago. What we really did with those people is we helped them take the first step in their recovery. They couldn't do it by themselves. And we helped them take that first step. They can then take the next one and another one and another one, and they're on the road to recovery. Later on that night, we went back to our operations centre, and we always invite the community to come and be part of our daily debrief. And each day the party gets bigger and bigger because people come in and it's part of connecting the community together. But what I see is that the community comes in and they say, thank you so much for coming out onto our farm and helping us. And the veterans there are saying, no, thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve. And then, no, thank you. And it just keeps going. And it's a very, very powerful thing to be a part of. So if you're ever in an area that we're operating in, please come into the daily debrief and experience for yourself the impact we have on the community, and by doing that, on the veterans who are there as well. Just a little bit about who we are. So we did rebrand from Team Rubicon to Disaster Relief Australia because we felt the name just spelt out much better what we do. We're about 80% veterans, and that is by design. I knew that if we were just an entirely veterans organisation when we started, we'd be a closed boys club that harks back to the war all the time. So we've got a lot of emergency first responders. They bring additional skills that we need to professionalise us as a disaster relief service. And we have a lot of civilians as well. And you can see young Hulwin there. She's 19 years old on her 3rd mission, and she's the safety officer and had been trained through Disaster Relief Australia and training as a paramedic in her spare time. So one of the things we've been able to do very successfully is attract a lot of women in the organisation. We're about 30%, and lots of young women in particular, and that's a real struggle for other disaster relief organisations at the moment. We've got around 3,000 people nationally. We've got a disaster relief team permanently based in Sydney, and shortly we'll have another one up towards New South Wales Central Coast or around Newcastle somewhere. and a satellite up around the Lismore area. I just want to talk a little bit about the work we do. For the most part, it's really nitty-gritty hard work that nobody else really does. So we're not a response organisation like the RFS or the SES. We work in the recovery phase, and that is when the lights and sirens leave and people start coming back to their houses or what's left of them. That's when we come in and when we start doing the hard work that they need to get them back on their feet. The majority of our operations have actually been based out of clubs, particularly in New South Wales, because the clubs are plugged into the community. You would know that if you're in a rural regional town, every single member of the community is a member of the club, and that's enabled us to reach into the community and provide assistance to them rather than have them try and reach out, particularly when they just don't know what's there. But there's two capabilities in particular I'd like to draw your attention to. The first one is spontaneous volunteer management. Now, spontaneous volunteers are people who just turn up after a disaster and they want to help. They're not part of any structured organisation. Traditionally, spontaneous volunteers have just been told, can't use your help, thanks, go away. But there's a recognition now that communities actually have a right to take part in their own recovery. And when they do, they become more connected, and that promotes healing and it builds community connectedness. But there are very few organisations that have the command and control capability to put them on the ground, which is why veterans are fantastic, because they are inherently leadership trained and they just do this really, really well. So we started trialling this out in Dubbo, based out of the Dubbo RSL Club, to help farmers who've been impacted by the drought. And we tried it with 20 surf lifesavers in the middle of winter because they were looking for a way to help, and it went really well. And then we expanded and managed 700 or 800 volunteers over the Black Summer that has just passed. There are lots of databases out there trying to catalogue these guys, but very few organisations that can actually put them on the ground. The other area we've been really successful in is bringing battlefield technology into the disaster relief space. So this is just an overview of a flyover of Ratville, which is up near Casino in northern New South Wales. And what we do is we come into an area and we use some of the tradecraft we've learned in the military to do an overview for the community. And what we find when you look at something like this is there'll be dozens of houses in any local government area, particularly where it's regional, that are simply off the grid and no one knows they're there. So we can identify those houses and get them some assistance. I'm just going to change screens to help. Excuse me for 1 second. You got me, Brad? Has the screen updated, Brad?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thanks. So a drone is little more than a flying camera, but if you're an individual homeowner, we can actually drop a drone down in the middle of your property and work out what's the percentage of damage to the property, or how many vehicles or outbuildings, how many homes in a community. We can provide to the council and tell them how many cubic metres of rubble they're going to have to clear in the community overall. At the moment, what we're doing is we're overflying communities that were impacted over summer, and we're looking at what stage of recovery they're in. So are there houses that haven't even started? Are there people that appear to have started but are floundering, and trying to connect resources to need, because there's always a lot of resources out there, but it's very difficult to connect the resource to the need, particularly where the people are isolated. And then as we move forward, we talk about community resilience. People don't actually do it that well. But you can see here, there's a fire that has burnt through and stopped at the fence line. So we can provide information to homeowners like the likely fire behaviour. And if we know it's going to be a catastrophic fire danger, we can overlay information that we've gained here onto their risk profile or onto the ground, so they can look around and know what's going to happen in the event of a catastrophic fire. If we take that a little bit more broadly, we could, for example, look at those houses, and if they were remotely isolated, we could say to them, maybe you need to push a tree line back a few hundred metres, or mow your grass, or put up a fence line. If it's remote, we could say to the Rural Fire Service, there's no water refilling point here. If you want to defend this community, it needs to have some additional resources, and really prepare communities for what is to come. And that's just off the top of my head. There's so much more detail we provide, but it is really bringing those skills learned on the battlefield, because the drone is just a flying camera. It's how you process the information and provide actionable intelligence to people so they can use it to work on the ground. I won't go through the process of going back to my other screen. I'll just simply say that Disaster Relief Australia is a Category 1 Club Grants recipient, so if you would like to be more involved with us and work together, then please contact Brad or Gary or myself. And otherwise, I'd like to thank everyone that supported us. We got tremendous support from the association, particularly over Black Summer, for our disaster relief activities. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Geoff. A very informative presentation on the great work that DRA have been doing and continue to do. Like Geoff said, the RSL and Services Clubs Association and the VBF board have been supporting a couple of operations and helping with some materials that you need to conduct those operations, and we look forward to continuing that relationship well into the future. So next we have myself, and I'll be talking on the Kokoda Youth Leadership Challenge, one that I've participated in and trekked 147 Ks across the Kokoda Trail 3 years ago. Still feels like yesterday that I did that. I made 16 lifelong friends, and we still talk to this day. It changed my life, and it has changed pretty much every single person's life that has walked the Kokoda Trail as part of this Kokoda Youth Leadership Challenge. This is a quote that we just live by. Should be something that every young Australian should aspire to do. It's just a life-changing program. You learn so much about yourself, about leadership skills that were inside of you and be brought out on the trail by the amazing leaders through Adventure Kokoda. The young kids that leave are so shy and so quiet, and when they come back, they're such different people. They're just full of life and they want to change the world. And that's how I felt when I came back. I just wanted to change a few things in my life and pursue a few different things, and I have, and I owe that to the Kokoda Youth Leadership Challenge. A little overview on the Kokoda Youth Leadership Challenge. It's a 10-day trek, 12 days in total, walking 147 Ks, like I said. Through the sponsorship of clubs and sub-branches, we've had 600 plus kids or young men and women walk the Kokoda Trail, which is an investment of around $3 million by clubs, which is an impressive and an amazing thing. And I love working on this program. Each year we have 60 plus trekkers participate. Like I said, thanks to the clubs and sub-branches and a couple of leagues and sports clubs who participate. If you're not a member of our association, it's not a problem. We'll take any club that wants to participate in this program and who wants to sponsor young kids. Some clubs sponsor 3, some sponsor 5 trekkers in the program. Just to give you an indication of how popular the program is now, over the last 3 years, the association has attracted candidates from all over New South Wales, WA, Queensland, Victoria, and we have constantly people from South Australia participate. Like I said, the trek is the actual trail is meant to be 96 Ks, but Adventure Kokoda take you on the real trail of 147 plus Ks, and it's changing from climbing mountains to dropping down into rivers and climbing back up again. And as you see here, you see from the start to the finish of how many mountains they have to climb in that, and they're carrying their own 12 to 15 kilo pack. They get the full experience that our diggers got to do. So the KYC program, we provide 2 treks. There's a trek 1 specifically for club managers or club industry suppliers, and that runs in the August period. Dates are yet to be confirmed for next year. Due to COVID, we had to cancel our treks this year, and we're still keeping on the updates of what's going to happen next year. So at this stage, we're going to plan as if the treks are going ahead next year. So we'll still keep everyone up to date with that. Our trek 2 is our young person's trek with 15 to 25-year-olds participating, and that's in the September school holidays. So they won't miss out on any school there. It's the 5th year we've had the club industry trek, which was one of the ones that I participated in. So you got to meet a lot of the club managers who have been selected by previous club managers. It was a really amazing experience, and they can go back to their clubs and become a leader in their club and talk about their experiences to future participants. It's really amazing. The program, like I said, has changed their lives for the better. Some of the participants have gone on to join the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army. It's one of the candidates had just joined the Navy and went to Cerberus, I think it is, in Victoria, just before COVID hit. But that's some of what people do. Some directions they go in is joining the Defence Force, or they go off and be a paramedic, or they go on and do something in university and that they've always wanted to do. In 2017, the Kokoda Youth Leadership Challenge was awarded the Clubs and Community Award for Youth Leadership, thanks to Clubs New South Wales. Here's a group shot of the guys in 2019 before they're about to depart to Papua New Guinea. They're all smiles and nervous laughter there. They actually didn't know what they're about to take on. And I'm pretty sure their smiles were wiped off their faces as soon as they got to Sagiri Lodge and were debriefed by Charlie Lynn about what they're about to endure. And that trek there was one of the wettest treks they've ever had. It just rained non-stop. So it was an experience and a half for them. The selection process for us starts and opens on Monday, the 1st of February, and closes the 30th of April. This gives clubs a period of time to advertise in their local community to their high schools and universities. Some clubs do. And we always recommend that you have a committee of 3, maybe 4 people, whether that's directors, a HR manager, the CEO, so they can conduct an application process of, and interview them once they've selected their ones, and see if they have the right mindset and the physical ability to do that. It's quite a tough trek. I went there and I was fit, but I wasn't fit enough. It was just, there's nothing like Kokoda. You just can't prepare enough for it. So that will help in their selection process on looking through who would be the best person and the best fit for their club as well. Here's some of the photos from the guys on the trek. You get to know the local kids and the village and the local elders in their villages, and they love anything to do with sport. You grab a football out and kids come flocking from everywhere, as you see here in the photo, and they just love you. They have the biggest smiles. They have nothing, but when we leave, their lives have changed because we've just given them some donations and things like that as well. And we took the time out to spend playing footy, or as simple as hopscotch or bull rush or whatever it is. They love it. And there's lots of different spots that you come across, the river crossings and the finish line at Kokoda there, where you've just the relief of completing that, and you literally want to do it again once you finish. The costs involved in the Kokoda Youth Leadership Challenge is $6,500, $1,500 deposit, and the $5,000 to pay at the very end. That includes airfares, the trek, all their equipment over there in Papua New Guinea, their airfares and their travel insurance. The other additional expenses you see there, some trekking equipment, medical expenses, spending money, passports, etc. Some clubs do raffles or auctions or things like that to help the trekkers with their other expenses. Some help with a small donation on top of what they provide by sponsoring them. There's a few different ways that a trekker can participate in this, and I'm happy to work with any club on doing that, and we have a number of clubs that can help with providing information on what they do and how they do their process. Club grants can help with this. It's Category 1 expenditure in New South Wales, so you can sponsor a trekker or 2 in this program thanks to the club grants. I can help you with any information on that as well too. Just a few tips on how they can prepare: reading as much information about Kokoda as possible, watching documentaries, starting a comprehensive fitness program, whether they go to a gym, they go for long 10, 15K walks. Parents get involved and the family get involved. That's the thing I love about this as well, is not just the trekker gets involved in this, the family go on walks with them and get fit themselves and really push and drive them. So the fitness is the biggest thing that I'll say that you really need to do. Working with the sponsor club or association, engaging with their local veterans and their RSL members. Some clubs have the trekkers come and present after they've come back with some photos and their experience on the trail. So that's a good way for the clubs to engage in their community with their members and with these trekkers as well. Gosford RSL are a prime example. They get them to participate in Anzac Day dawn services, and the ones from the previous year conduct some of those services, and the ones who are about to go on the trek get to watch in the audience about what they'll be doing the following year. These are just some things on why clubs should be involved. Gives you a better tie to the community and promotes some of our Anzac and Kokoda traditions and gets people talking about Kokoda. It's not really spoken about as much as Gallipoli and a few other things. So for us, gives clubs and the leadership program a greater awareness of the sacrifices of our diggers in the Kokoda campaign. It does transform them and through their experience. They come back with 20, 30 plus friends for life. They help volunteer. They've volunteered in some of our programs that we've helped fundraise for and do. So it's endless of what they can provide once they've returned and during the program as well. While I trekked, I shot a little mini inside of what to expect and how tough it actually is. This is just a little short preview. If you want to watch it, you can head to our YouTube channel. Just search for RSL and Service Clubs Association, and it's just called Kokoda Trail to Leadership. When our new website gets up and running a little bit more, I'll have the full version of this and more Kokoda youth leadership information there. I lost 12 kilos on the trail because it was just absolutely brutal and it's hot, but I would go and do it again. No matter how many times I've complained about how tough it was, I'd still do it again in a heartbeat. That's it from me for today. So if you have any information, you want any information from me, please don't hesitate to contact me on the details there. Happy to help or come and see you. I work with a few clubs who have just joined in the program, come out, present to high schools, and provide as much information as I can. So thank you for all that. So now we have Katie Biggs, who's from Lifeline in the Northern Beaches, and she provides a program called Accidental Counsellor. So I'd like to welcome Katie.
Hi, thank you, Brad. And thanks for everyone for inviting me to be a part of this webinar. It's a lovely opportunity. I'm here to provide you with some information on our Accidental Counsellor training, which we are hoping to deliver to the clubs across the state next year. So before I do that, I just would like to share a little bit of information about Lifeline and why we feel delivering this training is so important to the community. Oops. Sorry. Okay, so about us. So as you may already know, the Lifeline Network leads the way in providing crisis support and suicide prevention services to Australians in need 24/7. Lifeline Australia is unique as it has a national reach, but a local approach with 40 centres around the country delivering services to their local area. Our vision is an Australia free of suicide. So why do we think, or why do we deliver the accidental counsellor training? So basically, this is a bit of a snapshot of the problem that we're trying to solve in 2020. So over 2 million Australians experience high to very high levels of psychological distress. Approximately 370,000 people think about suicide. Approximately 65,000 attempts. And this is what's really interesting here. As you can see, 10% of those people contact Lifeline, but the bigger proportion, 20%, contact family and friends. And this is why we think upskilling the community through the accidental counsellor training program is so important. We've had 3,318 deaths by suicide over a year. A few more statistics. So suicide is the most common cause of death for Australians aged between 15 to 44, with men representing 3 out of every 4 of the suicide deaths in Australia. However, suicide and suicidality is on the rise amongst women. So as I said, 65,300 Australians attempt suicide every year, which basically equates to more than 7 suicides are attempted every hour. So almost 8 people die by suicide every day. So these numbers are incredibly high and disturbing, really. So as you can see, as I mentioned, this is the age bracket. So it's from 25 all the way up to 64. That's, more than 50%. The estimated social and economic costs from suicidal behaviour for the community is $17.2 billion every year. And Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are 2 times more likely to suicide than non-Indigenous people. This is the crisis call number 13 11 14. It is operational 24/7. We also have a chat online available every night where people can text and communicate with a crisis supporter via text. So one of our purposes is to empower individuals in the communities to stay safe from suicide. So that's again why it's so important for us to upskill communities and individuals in the communities through the accidental counsellor training. So what is it? Basically, it's a 4-hour training. Now, we break it up into 2 parts. So the first part, we use what we call the 3 R's. So that's about recognising signs of emotional distress or mental health challenges. How would you recognise it? What does it look like? What are some of the behaviours you might see? And when to put your accidental counsellor hat on. And then the second R is responding. So how to respond with confidence and appropriately. And that includes skills such as empathy, active listening, paraphrasing, and conversation starters. So we develop those skills in the training. And thirdly, refer to professional help while providing support. So that includes, what are the limitations of the role of the accidental counsellor, and how important it is to know what your local services are and what services are available online. During the training, we really emphasise that we learn to recognise a crisis. We don't diagnose it. We learn to respond to a crisis, but we don't solve it. And we learn to refer to other professionals who are qualified to diagnose and help. The training is designed to give you more confidence, I guess, in responding to your colleagues or your friends or your family members who may be experiencing a personal crisis. We are also, I guess, all of us could find ourselves at some point in our lives in a position where we have to be like a first responder, I guess, like the AMBOs of mental health. So the sessions are very interactive, and we try to, there's a lot of reflection, there's a lot of role play, which people hate, but it's really worthwhile. And there's, we show some short videos of what to do, what not to do. So it's very interactive. It's not a lecture by any means. And it's an opportunity for sharing experiences. So just to emphasize, you're not learning to be a counsellor, but instead you're learning to provide a one-off first aid support to those who are in need. The second part of the training is on suicide and self-care. So what signs could indicate that someone may be feeling suicidal? How would you respond appropriately and with confidence? And the importance of really asking clearly and directly. And that is not easy. And that is something that most people feel a little bit uncomfortable about. So we feel it's really important in the training to really talk through how to do that, and for our participants to practice that. So as I said before, we use role plays and video demonstrations, you know, showing you the right way to ask about suicide. You know, helping a person who is suicidal, we understand is very complex. So we do look at 3 key actions to helping a person. So we break that complexity down a little bit, and just so that we can make it really practical. What would you say or do if someone said yes? So this is something that's really important for us to explore. So if you ask somebody and they actually say yes, I have thought about suicide, well, what do you do then? What do you say? Or what do you say if they say no? So we unpack all of that as well in the training. And then, of course, we look at self-care, which is absolutely important and paramount when you're supporting people in crisis. So as we know, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You must fill your own cup first. So we do look at self-care strategies and how to keep yourself safe, and what you should look for, I guess, what behaviours you should look for in yourself if you're feeling overwhelmed, and how you would then get help yourself. So that's explored. So how will it benefit, you know, the clubs and members? Well, you know, you're basically learning to recognise signs of emotional distress in your colleagues at the workplace, or with your family, or with your friends. We'll teach you how to respond appropriately and with confidence, using those skills like active listening, empathy, and conversation starters, and then looking at how to refer to professional help while providing support to your friend or colleague or family member. So if you would like to host one of these trainings at one of your clubs, you can contact Narelle on that number there, 0411366154, or you can email her on admin@rslservicesclubs.com.au. That's it from me. So thank you. And yes, thank you again for having me on this webinar. Hope to see some of you next year. Thanks.
Thanks, Katie. A great program for us to be involved with. I know from firsthand from Jenny White, one of our corporate partners. She has a club managers group that she's involved with, and one of the club managers had to use some of the training that they'd learnt recently. So we know that program works, so that's why we're heavily supporting this, and we hope that a lot of clubs jump on board this, because times have been tough this year. So we really think that this is something that every club should get on board with. So thanks, Katie. That's pretty much wraps up everything for today. I'd just like to thank our presenters today, Katie, Mike, Geoff, and I'll thank myself as well for participating today. If you'd like to contact any of the presenters today, let's put up our slide here. Their contact details you can find there. They'd be more than happy to answer any questions or provide any information that you require. You can find our past recorded webinars on our website here, just www.rslandservices.clubs.com.au/webinars. We've got all our recorded sessions. This one will also be recorded and put up live on our website tomorrow and sent out by our e-newsletters. That's our last webinar for this series for 2020. I'd like to thank all of our presenters across the 14 webinars we've hosted for participating and passing on their knowledge and providing our clubs with some important and vital information. And I'd also like to thank our participants as well. Without you, this program wouldn't have been successful, and we look forward to bringing it back again next year in 2021. If you have any questions or would like to provide some topics that we might want to look into, please contact either myself or Gary Gibson in our office. But for now, I'd like to say good afternoon and thank you again.